Good morning, everybody. I'm Chair Barry Bialik, and I would like to welcome you to the March 3, 2022 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We're streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen and comment live by phone. Please dial 855-925-2801 and use meeting code 7663 to listen in. Those of you out there with us today, welcome. I'll now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone, option *6 after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Let's see, I saw Scott Adams.
Morning, Scott Adams, Urban Planner with Land of Sky Regional Council.
I didn't see Dewana join yet. Is Dewana there? Paul Heathman, you there yet? Margie?
Hi, this is Margie. I'm with Weaver Cook Construction Company.
Brian?
Brian Metzman.
Joe, you out there yet? Chris?
Good morning. I'm Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts, a local civil engineer who does a lot of residential projects in the area.
Brandy?
Good morning, Brandy Woodard, Asheville Housing Authority.
Zakia, are you there yet? Babs, are you there yet? Nope. Andy?
Good morning, Andy Barnett with Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity.
David?
David Bartholomew with Pisgah Legal Services.
Thanks all. I'm Barry Bialik, and we also have Councilwoman Mosley and staff. I saw. Welcome everybody. So today, first item, we'll just go through and adopt our minutes. As everyone, we have this new first time doing our new meetings method with the action minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? We'll get used to this new way of doing it, but I mean, I get it. It's just makes it really hard. It was really nice for year in review reading through our full minutes from previous years. I found that's where they were really helpful when I'm having to summarize and go through what we did for the year. Reading through those full minutes were really helpful. I can imagine, preparing reports for the year end is going to be a little more complicated without those, but I get it for the efficiency. So I'll have a roll call vote for adopting these minutes. Motion to accept these.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thanks. Second on that.
I second it.
Great. All right. Scott?
Aye.
Margie?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Brandy?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Myself, aye. I don't think, has anyone else joined us yet? Nope. Okay. Minutes. Thank you. Minutes are adopted. Next up, so there's the discussion about restructuring boards and commissions that's happening. I've attended one meeting on, Margie's attended a meeting on, and there's some coming up this week. So linked to our minutes, linked to our agenda this week, there's a press release on it and then a YouTube video kind of about what's happening. Maybe let's go ahead and has everyone had a chance to kind of look through the press release? Okay. Well, maybe do that. You want to play the video, Christina, and then we'll discuss that after that.
Yes. I'm
Okay,
pulling
thank
that up.
you.
I'm pulling that up now.
I'm sorry, it's supposed to be audio?
The city of Asheville has over 20 city council appointed advisory boards, one of the most in the state. Consistent challenges under the current structure have been identified by board members, city staff, and city council. As our advisory board structure has evolved over the years, the following challenges have been.
Sorry, can anyone hear the audio? It's really
Yeah.
tinny.
No. I think
So
Christina's
you
working
guys
on
are
it.
not able to hear that?
No.
To do. We are going to try another method of presenting this. Sorry that you guys couldn't hear that. I have everything full max over here for volume wise. So give us just 1 second.
There's a couple of, let's talk in the meantime. There's a meetings this week. March, you want to, do you know the schedule? And have you all received the emails for the invites to these? Okay.
Yeah, there's one tonight from 5 to 7. And then there's another one on Monday from 12:30 to 2:30 during the day. And then there's another one on the 9th from 5 to 7.
Okay.
What I'm not sure about is it the same information on all of them, or are there differing things on each of the presentations? I know it's open to the public or open for people to talk to.
Margie, can you just be careful to speak into your microphone when you turn your
Sorry.
head with your audio drops? Sorry.
Sorry, I forget.
The gist of what I understand so far is that they're looking at, looking at, here we go.
All right, I think this will work because I've done this before. So I can blast it with my speakers. So hopefully I'll turn up my volume.
The city of Asheville is looking to improve its current advisory board system. Currently, the city of Asheville has over 20 city council appointed advisory boards, one of the most in the state. Consistent challenges under the current structure have been identified by board members, city staff, and city council. As our advisory board structure has evolved over the years, the following challenges have been identified. Unclear committee roles and responsibilities, disconnect of priorities and work between advisory committees, unclear communication flow to city council, management limitations like completing budgets and staff capacity. This has resulted in a lack of consistency across boards and frustration for all stakeholders. We want to build an advisory board structure that is inclusive, strategic, and efficient. But in order to do so, we need to hear from you. Attend an advisory board restructure pilot workshop or send in your comments and questions to restructurepilot@publicinput.com. Visit publicinput.com/restructurepilot for more information.
All right. Thanks for the technical help with all that. So yeah, and there'll be a lot of conversation about this coming up. The gist of what I've seen is kind of, we discussed a little bit of it last meeting, is the proposal I've seen is kind of merging it down from 20 to about 4, and then doing a lot more task forces under those overarching 4 rather than have the 20. So that's the gist of it. And yeah, there's no question, we can all attest to the, frustration we've all had, at least over the past few years, it'll be interesting to see how, how the conversation plays out, and how public input is on this. Obviously we'll all have some feelings about this. And, I as, Chair, as a committee lead, there's no question the past 2 years have been, impossible, with us all just being Brady Bunch faces, that there's no, human interaction to it. I mean, there's human interaction, but not the, the physical interaction that goes with it. And, the efficiency of that and running a meeting it's really difficult. It's really difficult. And then having the networking that comes in place, from when I, over the years, been on this committee, I think 7 years. And, the success was always from all the networking that happens before and after and during the meetings. And, and then the conversations that can happen. It's really hard to have like meaningful roundtable discussions when we're all on the Zoom. And my focus is, the committee leader focus is really just on, staring at a screen and having to adjust just the bits of the running this meeting that, there's no AV team behind me doing this. So, I certainly appreciate the frustration everyone has had with this, as we all have had that, and the city as well. But my sure hopes on this, and I've shared this at the meetings that I've been as feedback about these changes, that I sure would hope that conversation waits till we're allowed to be in person again, because this is, the boards and commissions add such a public voice to things. And, during COVID, the transparency has been really difficult to maintain because of just, we're not face to face. And I really hope that, we're allowed to have physical meetings about this before decisions are made for us.
I was just going to say also that I think, based on the PowerPoint that I've read through, is that they want all the 4 groups to align with the city's comprehensive plan.
But that's, we'll have a lot more. Yeah, sorry, I'm having technical stuff, I guess. You can hear me but can't see me, is that right? Okay. I'll if you want to chat, Margie, for a minute, I'll log off and see if I can log back in and get video back.
Yeah. There's a pilot proposal restructure that's online that I copied off that really gives a very clear definition of what the city management wants and what they're trying to do. And the advisory boards would be equitable community, well-planned community, housing advisory, and healthy environment and livable community. And I think housing falls under that housing board, housing advisory board, affordable housing does.
So I have a question to that, and I don't know. Well, actually, I have 2 questions. One, do we have do we know where the kind of the initiative for this is coming from? Obviously, the little video clip that we looked at earlier talked about, dissatisfaction from multiple different constituencies, staff, elected officials, and commission members. But do we know where this is kind of originating from? And then my other question, and when I looked at the same slide deck that Margie's referring to with those 4 topics, I mean, obviously there's one that is housing specific, but housing, I don't know how you talk about, equity, well-planned communities, healthy environments, without also talking about housing. So I understand the interest in having the committee structure align with the livability or with the comprehensive plan. And I appreciate the fact that the comprehensive plan has these sort of cross-cutting goals that are, intentionally multidisciplinary or kind of reflect multiple perspectives. But then I don't know how you put a sort of siloed technical committee into one of those areas when it really touches all of those areas. It almost feels like you need a housing piece in each one of those four comprehensive plan, focus areas, because I don't see how you move the needle on any one of those things without thinking about housing. So anyway, just my initial thoughts in looking at this, and I don't know if any of you have any more answers, or if that's something that maybe Council Member Mosley wants to speak to, or staff can speak to.
So I'm happy to jump in now because I agree with everything you say. I also feel that same way about equity. So first of all, make sure you attend one of these sessions on the 3rd, the 7th, the 9th, and voice just that. I will say I have not been in the weeds on this. I know about it, but again, this is one of those things where if I believe that staff and some committee leads were the initial push behind this. Before I joined council, I was on a couple of other committees, and the sentiment that Barry expressed was also being expressed on different committees that I was on. I think the knee-jerk reaction is anytime there's even consideration of change, we go, what does this mean? The way it has been explained to me, and I never say which way I'm leaning, because something can be presented to us one way, and then there'll be community input, and then things can change. But I will say I do like that we're even recognizing that something needs to change. I don't know if it means 4. I don't mean if it means if it go. I don't know what it means. We want to hear from everybody. I think the whole point of the comprehensive plan, just the word comprehensive, by definition, we're saying all 4 of these work together. So Andy's thought is actually in keeping with the point of the comprehensive plan. I do believe that when housing is given as one, I think that's a way of saying that housing is elevated, because rightly understood, housing could be under each one. So housing to me says we're going to pay a particular interest in housing. It does not mean that equity is excluded, or a healthy environment is excluded. And I see opportunities really for housing to have sub-working groups. It would be perhaps the same people who are on this committee breaking down into working groups. And then, as Barry was mentioning, I think it would offer more opportunity for networking and talking, and even a spontaneity that might not exist with this current form. Because if you're very regimented, everything has to take place at this time on this day. There are people in the community who may or may not be able to make it because of work obligation or because of childcare. So again, I don't know yet what the final product is going to be, but I think just opening the door to the conversation of whatever change, to me, that's a good thing. I don't know if that helped you at all, but that's just my 2 cents on it and my thought about it.
Thank you. It helps to hear from you and kind of know a little bit of that background. And
I did see something in the chat, but it disappeared before I could see it. Can anyone else pull it up? I can't seem to. Okay, Councilmember Gwen Whistler is cited in the article as one of the drivers of the proposed restructuring. That is true, because she was on boards and commissions, and I believe they started looking at this before I joined. So I think a lot of thought has gone into it.
Yeah, to my point of not having technical backup. But yeah, so it's going to be an ongoing. I don't know the timeline of it, and I guess as more will come out on that. But we should all stay pretty abreast of what's going on. Did Margie drop off also? No. Okay.
She's right there. I just monopolized the conversation.
Okay. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting process. I'm not sure what timeline is. I guess we'll hear a lot more about that but I'd encourage y'all to attend the meetings as you can. Anyone else have anything they want to say about it, or should we move on? So the list of available homes. And,
hey, Barry, I apologize. I do think one of the things we need to figure out is what the timeline for conversion to these committees might be, so that we can, as we're working through our groups, like our build group, and coming up with recommendations, that we know the good work that we've done and all this stuff doesn't end up in some weird transition phase. So if we need to start working to formalizing recommendations and stuff more, we have to kind of like shift from brainstorming to codification of what we've learned so far. So that's my concern, is that, you know, this restructuring, if it's a year off, it's not a big deal. If it's 3 months off, that's a larger impact.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get some timeline info on it. I haven't heard any set dates on it. You know, our experience certainly is the city doesn't move very fast on things, so we'll see. You know, we'll see. I haven't really heard, but I'm hoping that, you know, that's definitely one of the questions that's been asked, but the answers have been a little vague that I've heard so far. So we'll see. But you know, that'd be a good one if you attend the, you know, some of those info sessions to ask. So on the reports, you know, one of the things that we discussed last time is that there was zero, you know, on the houses less than 275, there was zero. There was again zero. So just for comparison's sake, I mean, I upped it by $50,000. There still was almost nothing. So I upped it by $100,000 to 375. And, you know, I think you saw on the reports, there was, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 homes in the city of Asheville less than 375. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's like watching something slide away from us. And, you know, it's a mix of, you know, it's just scary and sad, because as we know with the, you know, the AMI charts of people's income, that it just doesn't, the numbers just don't match up. And, you know, I hope, you know, as some of the creative things we have come up with and discussed, and some of the barriers we've identified and build, and some of the different, you know, ideas that are coming out of Connect, how, you know, we can help foster and, you know, offer up some creative solutions, because it's, like I said, it's to the point that we need to get uncomfortable with some of these discussions for how we're going to make this happen, because housing is out of the reach of most people now that live here, and that's really sad. So, you know, so that's when I went ahead and upped those reports, just so we can see where the numbers hit at what number, just so we know what our gap is. And it's, you know, it's tremendous. How do you know, it's just out of side question for Andy, and I know like Mountain Housing does this. Mountain Housing hasn't done much in the city, but when you do things, Andy, how does it work? Because if you have to sell a house, and there's obviously no way any house would appraise for the 275 now, how do you reconcile with that?
Well, it just means a deeper subsidy to the buyer to make that happen, right? So we structure, obviously we sell the home at its appraised value, but then that gets structured into 2 different loans. One is a repayable loan based on you know, what would be 30% of the borrower's income, right? And the difference all goes into various layers of subordinate financing that is either deferred payment due on sale, or, you know, structured in some other way. It's basically what we talked about when we looked at the down payment assistance program, right? There would be an additional lien in some amount that would make the home affordable. So you know, there are multiple layers of you know, public sector down payment assistance, and then the balance is private sector fundraising that gets kind of built into the project in a deferred payment loan. So and that, you know, as that number gets bigger, obviously the amount of resources we have to do the next project gets smaller and reduces our volume of production. So it really becomes cyclical like that. When we see those, when we see that the price spike. The other thing that we're seeing here, and we talked about this several months ago when we were looking at this list, that the home sales price limit set by HUD for the, as kind of the affordable limit under the Home Investment Partnership Program, is now way below what appraised values are coming back at, which means those funds can't be used on homes that are built in our region because our local appreciation is rising so much faster than HUD makes its annual calculation, that we run into problems. And again, that's more stuff that the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium that administers those home funds deals with. But it's a really significant problem because a lot of the state funds that are available for through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for affordable home purchase are restricted by that home value cap as well. So what we've seen in the last year with home prices locally is really unprecedented, and it's finding its ways to create lots of barriers in lots of places, other than just where it shows up in the market price of things.
No, that's interesting, because so you're saying is because the sale price is, even if there's gap financing or silent seconds or whatever is doing assistance, if the sale price is more than the HUD guidelines, then it limits the financing options for it. So does HUD update? I mean, do they update? I mean, obviously they update the numbers every year. So do they update the numbers even if they don't reconcile with the AMI, or they still set the maximum?
So this is separate from their AMI calculation.
Yeah.
But yeah, they will reset those numbers annually. And I know the state is looking at several urban regions in North Carolina that are seeing the same thing that we're seeing. Appraised values increasing faster than what HUD's calculation is likely going to return as a maximum qualified sales price, even in next year's calculation. So they're looking to see if we can do something similar to what we did. Y'all will remember a couple of years ago, the Housing Authority went to HUD and got a kind of an exemption from the formula calculation for fair market rent to do a local rent study, and that let them increase the rental rates. They're looking at doing something similar to that for a few places around North Carolina. So again, that would have to be something that our local, the regional housing consortium that administers home funds would take on, the way I understand it. But that's another challenge.
Yeah. So it's just something I guess we should be aware of, like noticing as the prices come up. It means we're well aware of that, but how this is creating, that's a significant issue, that if regardless of the gap financing that helps with these, that if it exceeds certain limits, it can't even use some of the financing that is most normal to use, for those products. Scott.
Hey, Andy, I had a quick follow-up question on that. I know what the housing consortium is, but I'm not intimately familiar with the mechanics of it. But is part of the issue also that it's a regional housing consortium, not just city of Asheville or Buncombe County, but outlying counties? So the spike that is Asheville is being flattened amidst those other jurisdictions. Is that a fair question to ask, at least in terms of math or averages or whatever else they're using to?
It's a fair question, and I don't know. Maybe there's somebody on the call, a staff member who's staffing the consortium, because I know the city of Asheville administers funds on behalf of the consortium, and they may know this answer better. I mean, the spike that we're seeing here, we're seeing all across the region that's it has a membership in the consortium. So it's just more of kind of a procedural set of steps that, you know, they would have to go through. I think we're dealing with this all across the, if I'm remembering right, the consortium is Madison, Buncombe, Henderson, and Transylvania. And so we're seeing the same kind of, you know,
that's correct. The Jonathan Jones, interim community development manager. Yes, the home consortium represents Buncombe, Madison, Transylvania, and Henderson County. And I can also share a link in the chat that has the latest home sales price calculations that went into effect May 2021. So that's also available on our website.
And can you make that publicly accessible? I just clicked it. It said users need access or an access code.
Yes, let me figure out how to do that. Because it's a PDF, it doesn't follow our typical permission settings. But yes, I will get that reposted.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I mean, I guess this is in addition to the price spike. That's a really good point. You know, coming up about the financing issues that no matter what the assistance is, we're gonna run into this gap. So if we want to just, you know, keep this in mind, is later on the agenda, we have a discussion. I was going to do a roundtable kind of about, you know, as we talk about the, you know, discussion came up last meeting about our committee focus on production and process and policies, and, you know, how, you know, basically the creative need for additional production will come into play. And, you know, with, so just keep that in mind of how we're going to create houses less than 375,000 a town. I'm waiting for all of our solutions to come up later in the meeting. Other reports, you know, so last meeting we decided and we discussed that we'd like to have a rental report. The issue, you know, David and I offline have just, you know, we emailed a little bit back and forth trying to come up with what that report could look like, and the understanding, you know, because it's a significant issue. As we know, these rent spikes, you know, I think what I'm hearing now, 2-bedroom units are probably in the 1,700 to 1,800 range. And what I'm finding, there's no one really preparing a rental report in the market that I know of. David, you suggest I asked who? I think you said by Mosaics. Do you mean the Realty? So I read.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up with Anthony over there and see, you probably know some people over there too. Yeah. I think there is some kind of report that some of the realtor companies have access to. I mean, we can get it. It's pretty lagging. We can get some data, but it's really hard to get specific to the city of Asheville real time. And when it's jumping so fast, you know, I would love to have this data, and I think it would be really useful to include in our monthly reports. So I'm open to trying to work with a couple of realtors to try to create a report, or we can use some Pisgah data, but honestly, you know, we don't really have robust data either. It's who contacts us, and we have more data on evictions and things like that than we actually do with the rental prices. So.
Yeah, it's so I reached out to Mike Figura at Mosaics, and he said they don't prepare a rental report. So like, but it's, you know, I guess it's one of the, it's a you know, point in hand that there isn't any, like, this is, you know, this seems like a big issue that we also don't have any local group creating like any tracking the rentals other than some, you know, I think the most recent one I saw was the national, like, apartmentlist.com, which does it annually. But you know, it's an issue, and I wonder, this is something we're going to have to figure. I think it's, as we as a committee said, this is an important piece of data we would like to know, especially as we see this sliding out of reach of so many people, that how we could track that. And I don't know. It was a really interesting question, because we as a committee say we'd like to see that data. It sounds like the best readily data available, you said, David, is really just the evictions reports, the filings.
Barry,
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but there is one other organization that was doing this on an annual basis, and that's the Chamber. And I will reach out to them and see if they
Margie, your sound.
Oh, sorry. I'll reach out to the Chamber to see if they are still doing that. And because they were getting it from someplace like CoStar, which is very, very expensive. I'll also check because I'm a member of CIRA, which is the commercial investors, real estate guys. And I'll find out if someone from Beverly Hanks or someone like that has, because they all use CoStar, and if they can help us in getting this information.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So actually, brings to mind just one thing about rentals. So, is there, later again on the agenda, there was the had to point the fellow from Lost Star was been talking about doing that developers a meeting for a while, and one of the things he was trying to tie it in with, I guess, they're a supporter of the street sheet that was prepared annually. Is anyone on staff, Nikki? Do we know is that being updated, or is that kind of on hold because of staff shortage?
Well, and I've just reached out to Matt Allen to really talk about that, because he's been the person at Lost Star that I've been coordinating with. So really, I followed up with him, going to see if we can get together. So hopefully, I'm thinking perhaps the springtime would be a good time to focus in on that.
Okay. Is there an intern lined up for, like, I know in the past, like, you've had interns to help lean on for that assistance. I'm just thinking if there's when the update happens, I don't recall if the street sheet has like rent prices on it, but I wonder if that would be something to layer onto it, since we don't really know how that's collected.
Well, I think a lot of right now, I mean, I certainly share out the existing housing guide a lot. I mean, whenever we get inquiries about affordable housing, the major sources that I point people to is, of course, 2011. So 2011 with United Way is a really good connection point to just leveraging that resource to provide people with information about affordable housing opportunities, as well as the Housing Authority. We certainly direct people there. And then the street sheet. Of course, the street sheet's really organized to just list out all of the affordable opportunities within our community, but you really do have to do the work of calling the landlords, seeing that they have vacancy, and seeing if units are available. So there is a limitation there that it does require some work to call each one. And of course, with unit prices, that's very much based on income. So I think people who are looking for those affordable units should be able to have that price that's based off of the Appendix 1 there, the HUD price. But otherwise, I'm just thinking a little bit about those questions around pricing. I know we're due for another Bowen update for that market information. And so we can take a look at that and see how that really corresponds to discussion around rental pricing. So I know that that's coming up too, that we can focus on as another data point.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, if there's anyone on the committee, if there's anyone watching who's a data geek and wants to spend some time doing some research on rental prices, we certainly would appreciate it, because so Andy?
One other thing to think about as we're thinking about rental data, that most of the sources, particularly the formal sources, unless it's us picking up the phone and calling listings, don't capture a lot of the small unit. I have a duplex unit that I rent, or single families used as rentals, or mobile home park rentals. Most of the data sets that we could potentially get our hands on through, like Margie was saying, through the Chamber or through the Realtors Association, they really don't catch that piece of the market very well. And again, that's where most of the non-subsidized, the naturally occurring affordable housing, affordable rental that we have falls into that basket. And so it's just one other limitation on the data that's out there around rental properties.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see what we can put together. If nothing else, maybe we can start with just the eviction reports, just so we have something to start with that we can work on fleshing out.
and I have reached out to our IT to see what kind of reports we can run. I mean, my concern is that we're going to present a different picture, because even to get into our system, right, you've got to be, at 50%, or below AMI, and we're talking about some people, and most of our people are on subsidized housing, or a lot of our clients are. So, but we can, I mean, we always get the rent price, and we've run basic reports to see it go up, but maybe that can be part of whatever we do have. If like, I agree with Andy, a lot of the naturally occurring affordable housing isn't going to be in anything we get from any of the realtor companies, or maybe the Chamber of Commerce, but maybe our data can supplement that. And we can certainly give you the data from evictions, right? You must include your rate of rent on a summary ejectment. And we've been pulling all of those from Buncombe County. We have all of those. So I think this summer, we're going to put an intern on that. And I haven't really heard back from IT. We've been adding some new programming at Pisgah, so they're focused on that right now. But I do think we will have something.
I'm sorry, what can you define what RIT is?
RIT? Oh.
What does the acronym stand for?
I think he's just saying their IT department.
Oh, yeah. Our IT. Sorry, I heard RIT. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
We'll have to add that into our new definition.
I don't know. I don't know what RIT is, so I'm sorry.
Rochester Institute of Technology. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Pisgah's IT program.
Yeah. I think where it's like like obviously, the discussion about, with vouchers, and there's rent, the rents are set, and we understand that. So I think where the data will help the most is where the gap is spreading the most is the people who are like in that 60 to 80% AMI range. That's where those people, where they were spending 30% or more of their income with a rent increase. The people that are like, those numbers get pretty high. If an 80% between 60 and 80% AMI, I think some of those rents are now hitting 40% of their income. And that's kind of what we're the other part of the data to share is like how it's getting out of reach of not just the people who are needing the support the most, but 80% of the people in our city. So we'll see, but I appreciate the conversation. I think it is valuable data, and it was interesting, to see that we as a committee said we wanted it, and then realized, well, it doesn't exist. So we'll see if we can motivate someone to get behind that. So thanks. Any other discussions on our reports? Okay. Thanks. Move on to what's in our unfinished business, or our task forces, where build's continuing to meet. Yeah, I think we're gonna, with some of the uncertainty of our future, it probably would make sense to start fast tracking putting things on paper. And Andy, do you want to share some share some stuff about Connect? I know you guys have been having some good meetings.
Yeah, we continued to discuss the idea of creating some sort of equitable development scorecard model that the AHAC team could use to make sure that we're looking at all of the community benefits that we're trying to earn from our community development investments. So things like community engagement in the process, and disadvantaged business engagement in contracting and hiring practices on a development project. So in some ways, this sort of links this was the conversation we had at our last meeting, is like, how is this different than what Build is doing? If they're looking at what the regulatory barriers are to getting a unit built, we also know that we can think back on several projects that have stalled or kind of been scuttled because of public benefit requirements that were that just weren't able to be realized in a project. And so the idea would be to kind of use this platform as a way to gather community input around the things that we want to see from affordable housing beyond just affordability, and build that into to the assessment process of a project as it comes through on its way to HCD. So you've got a staff report that's looking at the developer's credentials and the financial viability of the project, and you've got all of the other technical review pieces that come along, but you've got a place for community input and those sort of kind of intangibles around a project to be scored and assessed and move in along with the project as it goes before HCD and then council. So we've made a little bit of progress on that. We found several good examples around the country where communities have done that. I haven't yet found an example where this kind of thing really got built into a formal approval process like this. Most often it tends to come from neighborhood organizations that are using a tool like this to either add their support or withhold their support from proposed projects that are happening in their neighborhoods. That works a little bit better in a council framework where there are council districts, and so you can neighborhood-based folks have a little bit more influence on a particular decision maker. But I do think this is a valuable role that AHAC could play in a place where again we're drawing not just on people who have technical expertise, like Chris or Scott or Margie, but have a platform for community members who are passionate about housing, but not necessarily down in the weeds of the technical piece of housing to represent their concerns in how we're thinking about individual projects or individual policy changes around zoning or things like that. So we'll continue to work on that and move that forward. We had a little bit more conversation also at our last meeting about the discussion last month around really what the role is of this committee and our work plan, and trying to create some balance between a focus on production, which has really been something that we've gotten fairly single-minded about because the lack of housing is the core issue. But there are other pieces as well around preserving the affordable housing supply that we have, and who can access units and those sorts of things that really land on the connect side of things, and trying to elevate that in the conversation as well as the production side of the equation.
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate you're bringing that up the past few meetings, because it is true. It's like there's the production focus, but then there's the policy, and then there's the connecting, making sure that once if we can ever open up the production flow, that the right units are being made. I use it as an example. I think one of the last Luigi applications we were allowed to review, where like the developer was proposing a single class of units, and they were all like studios, and they were meeting like the absolute minimum. And during our allowed discussion of that, it came up like, look, this is a single class. They have only studio units. There's some 1-bedroom units. Can't they be affordable? And like in that case, the developer actually adjusted their application before going to HCD and added in 1-bedrooms. And I think that's where I see like some of that what I refer to as connect and the policy comes into place, because most of these Luigi asks we've seen, there's very of the smaller projects where they're doing like they're 10 or 20% affordable, very few of them ever have family unit, those aren't family units being created. And I think that's important part of that to keep in the equation, that it's not just meeting the minimum for something, but to make sure that we're reaching what the people need, where even though it's true that the most needed vouchers are the single units, there's a lot of families that then don't get to participate in those developments that are just getting the minimum amount of units. So yeah, but and those are the things that over years as a committee, we've always discussed. And when we've seen applications and projects, those are things that always came into play in discussion. And I think that that and the connect group and the policy part keeps that at up top. Margie.
I just wanted to say, if you read the article in the paper about the new D review, the D review that's going to be constructed, is that they are going to have some, not a lot, but some 4-bedroom units. And those are so hard to find. I don't even know where they are currently, if we even have any, but that's a really good, I mean, you don't have a lot of them, but that's a good opportunity for the family to get involved. So not just 1 bedrooms, but 4-bedroom units.
Yep.
We build a lot of 4-bedroom houses for people who are moving from multiple rental units.
Mm. Hmm. Okay. Well, great. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate this, and I appreciate when we for always stepping back and reviewing what it is that we feel, if we're feeling like we're off point or off task, how we can make sure we keep that all balanced. And like I said last meeting, yeah, I agree. I probably have pulled it a little bit more production minded, because I see if we have the production, then we have the ability to write more policies. Right now, it's like it doesn't matter what the policies are if there's no project coming to the table. So, thank y'all. Next up, I don't know if there's any. I don't want to take too much time on it, but on the open space, is there any? I think council's having a learning session on it. Anyone else? Any info to share on that?
Yeah, I'll just note. Yeah, there is a city council work session next Tuesday, March 8th, 2 to 4 p.m.
Okay. And is there any after that? I think I saw Vidila hop on. Is there any plan after that where it goes on any agenda, or is it just waiting for that workshop to happen and then decide what happens next?
Yeah, this is Vidila. So we will give council an update and have some time specifically to talk through the various issues, and then we'll look to their guidance. So their guidance may just tell us to move forward with the formal process to go to the planning and zoning and then to city council, or it may involve some additional engagement. We don't really know, but we'll find out on Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Next up are our affordable housing challenges and code. That's kind of, I guess, a lot of what we're tackling with it, kind of build. I did hear one thing. I guess since Vidila's on the line, maybe I'll ask you if you don't mind. Has there been any? I heard some rumbling about a change of flag lot standards. Is there anything in motion about that, Vidila, that you know of?
I don't think so. We've internally kind of reviewed it back and forth a little bit over the last couple of years, and haven't really settled on anything, and it hasn't been a priority. I think there's kind of I'd say maybe a split in thinking that there's some, I'd say the larger consensus is behind not promoting more flag lots because of the break in feel of the effect of development on the street. So I guess that's all I have to say. If you guys wanted to talk specifically about it, we could put together some slides to bring to AHAC the specific issues of concern or things that we should think about, and then go from there.
Yeah. So there's nothing like active then. So there's nothing like being discussed to go to P&Zs. This is just
no.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, I think that would be pretty bad for affordable housing if that went away. But yeah, I'm happy to hear about that. Maybe I'll have to clarify what I heard. Maybe it was more of a technical talk of driveway standards. But at
one point we were looking at possibly narrowing the flag lot standard. Like Portland has a minimum, I think, 10-foot, entranceway, and ours is 20 feet. So there was some consideration of that and some other adjustments to allow for more flexibility.
Yep. Okay. All right, great. Well, thanks. I guess we'll see what happens at the meeting on open space, but thanks. Next up on our list, so we have, this has been here a while, the scaled affordable housing rebates for shorter length commitments, because that's been, been a discussion about especially for encouraging, again, with this idea that there is very little production coming, but then those who are building, there's not much offering the city has to help unless they're willing to put severe deed restrictions on properties. And so our discussion has been, is there some way we can offer a scaled rebate for this, like something to, even if it's because we have, it feels like we have such an immediate need that we need to solve that. Is there any kind of scale rebate offerings we could offer? I guess what I just, we've discussed this. I guess I'd like to just see if this is something we as a committee want to keep on the agenda. Or if we want to further this conversation, as a policy thing. I would be interested to hear what we all think about that.
I think if you can get scale and nuance, especially for smaller developers / smaller projects, it's a silver shotgun approach, just hitting any and all points that you can, and kind of going to our earlier discussion of, looking at rental rates amongst, duplexes, garage apartments, basement apartments, stuff that's not going to show up on a CoStar report for a, large scale apartment complex. I'm all in favor of trying to recognize nuance in an index and a tiered system.
So if there was,
sorry, I think that's really a good thing to do, but I want to share, and I can share it with Christina and she can publish it or put it online. But there's a publication called Construction Dive that a lot of you probably get, and they publish price increases for construction materials for the last 12 months through January of 2022. And I just think it's something that people should be aware of, because we talk about it all the time and it's in the paper, but nobody really realizes that, steel went up 112% and, other things are 55%. And these small infill developers are facing the same thing that larger developers are when you're going to build something, whether it's 6 or 26 or 106. You still are facing these incredible increases. And that's something that when looking at gap money for them, you have to take into consideration now. So I can send that to Christina, or I can just send it to the committee, whichever.
I get weekly. So we get a weekly price report from who we buy our lumber from to see. And there's a surge. Yeah, we're in the middle of another big surge, and then the the lead times. Of course, it's like it's 19 weeks to get a window right now, and then lumber kind of had its peak last year. Then it dipped towards the middle of the year, end of the year, and now it's spiking again, big time. I wonder, what are your thoughts? Like, as we're having this conversation, I'm trying to think of. Because as we've talked about this scaled rebate idea before, and obviously the policy doesn't exist for that, and we've talked about, I've asked, okay, well, really, what's the penalties that if someone does something and then doesn't do something, is that offer some kind of scaled rebate in effect? I wonder what would it look like? So if it's more of because some of our housing trust funds are just loans. And if it was a construction loan, what would happen? I'm just tossing it out there. The idea of an ADU. If someone if we contributed to the funding, the construction of an ADU, and part of getting that construction loan was they were committing for 5 years, 2 years for it to be affordable. So, and the loan is paid off before that. Basically, as long as there's any active use of city funds, that's when it has to remain affordable. But that the construction loan or that assistance can be utilized. I don't think we've really discussed that. What are some of our thoughts on that?
I think there's both for new construction and for preservation of existing, kind of naturally occurring affordable housing, those kind of incentives can work really well. So, it's relatively difficult to just apply regulatory pressure to say, hey, make this affordable, or hey, keep your duplex in good shape, but don't charge more for it when you have to go in and, replace the roof or whatever. I mean, but, if we think about those folks as, in the same way we think about other kind of economic development activity for small business owners, those kind of, a loan, an incentive program gives us a tool that may be easier to encourage people to do the kinds of things that we want them to do long term than just using regulatory power. So, to say, here's low interest financing through the Housing Trust Fund to build additional units on property that you already own. During the life of the loan, you need to keep those affordable at 80% of AMI. But once you've returned all of the city's, so the city's getting tax value off of that property, and they're also getting the loan repaid in interest. Once we've done that, maybe they take the property market rate at that point, or maybe they've had the kind of experience like Thrive is finding with some of the landlords that they're working with, where they were like, oh, I was really scared to do something in the affordable housing space, but now that I've done it, I don't, I'm fine to continue to lease this to a, voucher qualified tenant or an income restricted tenant or whatever it might be. So, I love this idea. I was looking, one of the things we've done with Connect is put together all of our different, city incentive programs for affordable housing and look at the various restrictions that each one of them brings with it. And some of the programs with the lowest incentive actually bring the highest set of hurdles to jump through. So, I think this idea of figuring out some way to make this scalable or create a new program that's scalable, to get the private market more engaged is, the small market more engaged is a viable strategy. I'd love to know what the next steps would be to make that happen.
Scott.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just trying to quickly categorize it into three categories of, rehab, renovate, addition, expansion, or new construction, and if you were trying to incent, new construction, which is mostly, at least in my view, that's what's most needed in terms of just pure supply and the general age and decline of our housing stock, at least within city limits. Stuff built in the 20s, that's 100 years old now. No matter how well you rehab and renovate it, at some point it's a diminishing return on that. So yeah, I like the idea of trying to, even just in the quick scribble that I did of rehab, renovate, addition, expansion, new construction. And if you were trying to apply different levels of incentives to those three different options, that could be a possible solution for small sites, small developers, what have you.
Margie.
Nikki, I have a question for you. Last year, we passed a policy that said that if there was a existing building that had, some vacancies, if a developer wanted to turn one or two of those and as people left, make those apartments affordable, has anybody taken advantage of that opportunity?
No. And I think, and this is where I see like a really interesting intersection between policy and then as it comes down into how we as staff enact those procedures. So that policy was created, right? But the infrastructure necessary to really market, advertise, get that going, have, proper staffing capacity in place to carry it out, develop those programs. Like that's where my mind is at, right? Is like, that's where I see how building out our internal infrastructure to really support those policies is what we need to do. So we have not. I'm very excited about that work. I'm excited about how Luigi may play in that space because I think that's exactly what it's intended to do. But we really need to build out internal systems of how we do that. So I certainly think it's a great tool and I want to see it be used. But I think we need to spend a little time on how to create that internal infrastructure to really make that opportunity widely known and widely taken up. So I'm excited about it, but we need to do some work in that space.
Okay.
How does it work? Like, so Nikki, like now, if someone applies for the Housing Trust Fund for a construction loan, and then, generally that loan would or could get paid off after the construction is complete. How would the policies as they're written now work if someone giving, like, to if a developer is saying, hey, I want $200,000 to build 2 houses, and it's a loan for a year or 2 year period, and then to get that, is part of what they're signing then is the 20 or 30 year deed restriction as a condition of that loan?
I may pull Jonathan in to really help me answer that. But as far as I know, especially just in my experience now working with the Haywood Street Community Development Project, that those are amortized over a 20 or 30 year period. So typically those loans are granted, but then the principal and interest payments that come back to the city is amortized over a set year period, whether that's 20, 30 years. In the case of Haywood, it's longer because that allows for a longer runway for payback. So those are held through a deed of trust right now, is the typical process and the legal instrument that we use to protect the city's interest there.
And that actually mirrors some of the home regulations as far as minimum affordability periods. So with home funds, there's a set time, even if the developer were to repay a home loan, there is a set amount of time that those units are required to be affordable, so that we don't end up with a program that is just getting a lot of turnover, but not actually resulting in long-term affordable units.
So currently you're saying the way it is, it's like, so if you're doing it, like even my understanding is that with the current fee rebate program, like to even get any kind of fee rebate where it's, the city certifying for MSD and water and the development fees, that is requiring, I think it's like a 20 or 30 year deed restriction. Is that?
I don't know. And I wish Janice Ashley were here, our legal representative, because I'm not certain on how the fee rebate program works. I'm much more familiar with real estate and or the loan instruments that we use to govern that. So that's a good question. We may need to follow up on that.
Yeah. It used to not require the deed restriction. It used to be based on the first turn. And then it was about 5 years ago, it changed. And that's when, the program essentially stopped being used. But
yeah, it seems like a lot to ask, deed restriction for a fee rebate seems like a tall order. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think, in the past, even my company it was enough of incentive for us to, like, we had certified, that our first turns of new construction were at the standards, because it was a significant incentive that didn't cost the city much, because it's really just certifying MSD. But I think there's value in this conversation that if we're saying what's needed is production, and if one of the things we can say, well, if we could make low interest loans that need to be paid off, if the restriction period is tied into the period of when city funding is used, I guess the bigger question is do we have an issue with the city's funds being used to turn over quickly if they're doing good, even if the good isn't for 30 years?
Right. And that's typically how we try to protect that investment always, right, is through the legal tools that we have, through things such as deed restrictions or loan documents. So, but that's something to follow up. It seems like if there's a lower threshold, especially for fee rebates, there might be a different tool that we can use to restrict that.
How do yours work, Andy? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, I know of an example of yours, that there's a Habitat house that probably received, I don't know if it received some city funding, that is now going into resale on the market for exceeding pricing standards. So what happens to a case like that? So it's a house that I don't know what restrictions it had on it, but what happens in that case?
Yeah, often we're able to buy those back and resell them to another income qualified family. Sometimes, because of the stuff we talked about a minute ago, we just can't put the package together to do, to buy those back. And at that point, again, with the deed of trust model that Nikki's describing, any public contribution to that project gets recaptured to be reused in additional affordable housing, and all of the private investment that went into making that affordable gets recaptured to make that to use for the same purpose. But the comment I was going to make is, I think the idea of restricting funds and creating longer term affordability makes a lot of sense if we're talking about a direct subsidy like that, right? So that, if you look at that model, that's a long-term subsidy to that borrower. But when we're talking about programs that primarily incentivize production, either by reducing the cost, like a fee rebate, or by reducing the cost through low cost interest for construction loans, that to me has always been an odd place to try to capture longer term affordability, because you're not putting long-term resources in the form of a subsidy into that property, right? You're recapturing all of that, the city's investment in a very short period of time. That's always been a place where I feel like we could dial things back depending on whether we're putting in capital for affordable housing or subsidy for affordable housing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think. I think it's. I mean, I'll share another example. Like so I completed 4 units that were purchased by a local investor wanting to help, and there's 4 homes that are they're family homes taking vouchers, and there was no rebates available. Like there's nothing, like there's no fee rebate, there's no incentives, because no one wanted to sign a 30-year deed restriction. And it almost seems wrong, because it discourages production to go towards the right thing, and it doesn't allow. I think I've used the example: you have to get married on your first date, and it doesn't allow. And that was where this ties in, Andy. That if it's a long-term investment or a short-term investment, but so in our this is a really good conversation. And this could tie in even with this almost could even tie in with, I'm looking at this list of these things on here. We're talking about the scaled rebates, the fee rebates, the housing trust fund using for that, and then down payment assistance. I mean, it might tie in the same thing. Like if you could have would the ask for down payment assistance from a housing trust fund be more likely to be easier to navigate and figure out if it could be, if the deed restriction is only tied into the length of when something's in place, and if it gets paid off, then those restrictions come off. It might help really encourage the production to use policies. It might be a way that the policy might encourage production to steer that way. See a lot of nods. So
if you want more cookies, you got to get the cookie cutter working faster.
Yeah. So in our new action minutes minded thing, are we up to a point and we want to maybe entertain a motion that we'd like to, I don't know, I guess ask to explore incentives that the length of the incentive is the restrictions or affordability are tied to the length of the city's. I'm trying to think of how to word it. You want to help me out here, or I guess do we feel comfortable? Do we want to even discuss this? I mean, entertain this motion now.
Barry, this gets us to kind of, at least for me, this gets back to the conversation we had last month. I don't know what we do at this point. Are we asking that HCD look at creating, a new, more flexible incentive program? Are we asking staff to research more flexible incentive programs? And do we have the authority to request staff to take action, or does that need to? I don't, at this point, I don't know what we can do and what we can't do. So
yeah. Yeah. So let me, I'll share let me just share, like, in the old days when we were in person, in the old days especially when we had a lot of, let's just say we had a lot more affordable housing friends throughout the government. So what would happen in a case like this, I'm just sharing how this would work. A discussion would come up like this. I would probably meet with some of the HCD members individually. I would then go to the HCD meeting, and it was kind of honestly pre-negotiated what the conversation was going to be. And then we would move it forward. That's how it used to work. We obviously have a pretty big disconnect with HCD now, and the focus and really the focus of with the communication the way it is, and a lot of the focus is the parties have not been on housing. But that's how it was in the past. Like, so this is what we would have done with that. But in the way that we're like existing now, it seems like, and especially with this idea of these actions are the only thing, whatever we do as an action item is the only thing that's going to really get discussed or reviewed or glanced by anyone out of this meeting. So we have to like make those nuggets and pass those nuggets up. So whether we're saying we'd recommend that I guess we would say we would recommend that AHAC recommends that HCD explore I don't know if we call it lower class, but a scaled incentive and rebate and loan program where the city affordability lengths are tied to the length of the city's investment in it. Brian?
Yeah, it just strikes me, HCD isn't very well structured to just investigate things, right? So we ought to go through and I think put together a proposal. We could ask them first if they were willing to entertain it, but then it might even be difficult for them to figure out what we're talking about unless we actually said, like, here are the incentives as they stand today. Here's what we would recommend them being moved toward, so that you have something concrete to discuss. Because I'm sure all they would turn, if you said, let's do scaled incentives, what would they do? Turn to Nikki and say, oh, can you come up with some examples for us? I mean, it just seems like we got to be proactive and make a recommendation.
Nikki, what do you think would be helpful in this case?
Well, so, and I want to clarify something too, is that currently our housing trust fund, any other, like the land structure that we did with Haywood Street. So there are restrictions that accompany those that do match the length of affordability. So if you think of our land use incentive grant, so that is tied to a certain number of years of performance in the land use incentive grant. And those agreements are tied to the number of years that is granted through the LUIJ, plus the incentives match that. So that's one case. Our second tool, Housing Trust Fund, the same exists. So when we have the Housing Trust Fund and we look at the amortization of that loan, that is the same timeline by which the developers are required to have the affordable housing restrictions that are agreed upon. So it varies, of course, case by case and dependent upon the loan. But again, the incentive timeline also matches the accountability for the developers performing. So I guess what I'm starting to sense, and then thirdly, for land, when there's city land in the deal or anything like that, we use deed restrictions, which are permanent deed restrictions often, to govern the action of the developer and the existence of that housing incentive, right? So we have kind of either a permanent scenario here with land assets, or we have a timeline that is that does match the amortization of loan tools. And to Andy's point, the only time that then that goes away is if the loan is paid off. But typically that amortization schedule is over a 20, 30, sometimes 50-year period. And so the only time that that loan document is closed is once the loan is paid off over that 20, 30, 50-year period. Or as Andy said, if they want to pay it off beforehand, we get paid back and that money gets cycled back out into the community for affordable housing. So I'm saying is like, I think the only question that I have is really on this fee rebate. And what I'm hearing too from the committee is like, yeah, the fee rebate, there's something there that we may need to understand better. So I'm curious, like if perhaps there's a little finer point on, again, I want to see our tools work. And I think we've got good traction with Luigi, notwithstanding our newest Luigi, meaning the existing housing stock, but we've got more to do on that before we can kind of assess the utility of that grant. Housing Trust Fund is a robust program that continues to perform well. City-owned land, there's good stories there, but it's a little more complicated because the nature of the program. If we want to hone in on fee rebate, if that's something that we may want to explore further, like that's where I'm seeing might be beneficial. But it's not exactly where you guys were headed, but I'm just hearing that if the idea is to make sure that our tools are functional, and that's something that can be reviewed by this group, it sounds like fee rebates may be worthwhile to explore as a first step. I mean, and I'm willing to assist with that because I need to better understand it for myself for sure, and understand like what some of the stops and starts are. And I'm sure, to your point, Barry, if you've participated in that before and there's been blocks there, then happy to think about how that policy could be improved. So
yeah, okay, yeah, I think to me, the fee rebate is important, and I think the short-term, like if there's short-term construction financing that's used to create stock, I think that should be discussed as well. Especially also we have we have bonds with Housing Trust Fund that we kind of needs to be used, and this could be a way that encourages the use of that to create production that is also naturally recurring, because if it creates stock and then it replenishes itself, is that a bad is it a bad thing? Even if it was, I think there's value in that. And I'm thinking, as knowing of the down payment assistance and some of these other funds that are out there, that if we can at least use them where they can be recurring, but they're creating good up front, I think there's value in it. So I think to keep this moving, but I think maybe again, we're trying to navigate this way of making sure that what gets on the minutes is important, because it's the only thing that's going to make it on the minutes if we vote on this. So even if what we vote is that we support the exploration and creation of scaled length policies, that might just keep this on the agenda, so when we read through the minutes next month or next year, we can recall what we spoke about. Does that sound appetizing to does that sound okay with everybody? Scott, you look like you're writing something for me.
Sorry, I'm just taking notes to myself.
Okay.
Yes, thumbs up on everything you're saying.
Okay. All right. So this is where this gets, I'll honestly say, it's running a meeting. This is where it gets really hard. I'm having to make up a motion on the top of my head. Andy?
How about this as motion language? So I would move that AHAC recommends adopting and adapting the city's incentive programs to promote smaller scale development or rehab for affordable housing.
Say it again. Sorry.
So we recommend adopting or adapting existing incentive programs to promote the small scale development or rehab for affordable housing.
Do you want to tie something in with the length of the something, because it's like scaled rebates that tied to the length?
Yeah, I don't, because I want to leave it a little more open, because as I look at that, to Nikki's point, some of the things already have, like Luigi and Housing Trust Fund, they already have the scaled thing, but they don't have, their issue is, the minimum 20%,
Got it. Okay.
affordability. Like we don't have a scale that says, I'm going to give you 100% affordability because I'm only building one unit. And as a result, I'm going to shorten the term of affordability or whatever it might, there's more nuance in the way these need to be kind of dynamic than just linking it to the term of affordability.
I get it. Okay. But yeah, it gives us, it keeps it alive and gives us the opportunity to now apply that to the different programs to see what the actual lengths are. So, okay. You want to go ahead and officially make that motion?
I so move.
I second.
Okay. Do a roll call vote on that. Scott?
Aye.
Margie?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Brandy?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Myself, aye. I don't think, has anyone else joined us? Tawana, Paul, Joe, Babs, Sakia? Nope. Thank you. I think, well, sorry, I think I forgot the part if we have any discussion, if we needed any discussion on that. Did we have any discussion on that? Sorry, I think I forgot that Robert's Rules of Orders piece. But, all right. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that this then helps keep the nugget up there so we can have something to discuss that moves on. Thanks. It was a good conversation. Yeah, and I think it's a way, we've had that kind of on there while in the discussion. And I know, I think this maybe we'll move this to the next step where we can kind of apply that. We individually over the next month could look at how those standards already, what's needed for fee rebates, what's needed for loan constructions, and how that ties in with there's a link. The next item on the agenda has the penalties link. So review that, because I've reviewed that, because I think in some ways the scaled rebate actually does exist by just by paying off the penalties. It's kind of like, it's almost like getting a really good loan with a prepayment penalty, and you just pay your prepayment penalty, and it actually, the benefit of that outweighs. So, all right, well, thank you. I think that's it on that section. So in our work plan section, so, in our last meeting, one of the things we have really said is we want a joint meeting with HCD. I sent out a request right after the meeting, and I was told maybe in April is the best I've gotten. March, HCD was off, I think, December and January. They had and in March, they're all kind of tied up in their CDBG proposals. So they're kind of tied up. So I've heard they're going to be business back normal in April. So I haven't been told for sure we can be on the April agenda, but I've shared how important it is to us, and I'm hoping that we can. That's about my only update on that. And then this, what we have in about this production versus policy discussion. I think we just, we tied some of that in with our conversation here, but I'd like to I guess just use this to kind of let's go around about, like, I think I'm definitely listening and have this, more, I want to make sure I'm making sure as leading this, that we have a very balanced discussion for all of our members, and we're not just getting too technical, where we certainly appreciate that the production is needed, but that the policies and this last conversation is an example of how maybe adjusting and tweaking some policies can really encourage the production. But I just want to kind of get everyone's thoughts on how we as a committee could better balance in our upcoming work plan for production and policy, whether it's expanding, whether it's being more targeted with the focus of the Connect committees and allowing some more conversation about policy outside, or what. I'm just open for ideas I'd like to hear. Andy, I'm going to pick on you first.
I was just deciding that I had already talked enough in this meeting and was going to let somebody else get a word in. I'd love to hear what Brandy's thinking about.
What I'm thinking about is, I feel like that I've been on this committee since September, and it's been very interesting to me because I feel like I'm not sure at this point what we're accomplishing, and that's my concern, because I know at the Housing Authority we are bombarded right now with a lot of different projects happening and a lot of new things because we're trying to, you know, put action into force and get some things done. So I think that's me. I'd like to see more action. What can this committee truly do to bring some action, not just talk about the need for affordable housing, but if that's policy change, whatever that means, but make some true action and move forward in that way. That's my opinion.
Scott?
I'm kind of with Andy. I feel like I talk a lot. I am all for policy and process, but if you don't have any product, then policy and process is for naught. I guess I want to clarify what we're meaning by policy. If we're talking about, Luigi down payment assistance, the city's policies, I guess through our work on the build subcommittee, I think of policy certainly much more so from zoning and development regulations that can help or hinder any project, whether it's classified as affordable or not. I'm just looking at that from a pure bottom line of pure housing supply production at any price point. That's even if you're building, for instance, the project, I think it was the Avery apartment complex that was recently turned down by city council for a conditional zoning, that had 9 affordable units in it, compared to the Haywood Street project, 45 units, which were all affordable. But if you approve 5 more projects that include 9 units apiece, then you're still reaching that same net amount. So I won't be shy about stating that I'm much more focused on production and policy from a standpoint of zoning and development regulations, which influence the end production or product. But I'm also very cognizant of Andy's emphasis on policy and process. But I struggle with the fact that if we have flat or declining product, then process and policy isn't gonna have much use.
Yeah, there's definitely different. There's the policy that goes into the technical part of the production, which I think is what we're tackling in Build. I think what Andy and Connect is not as much not the policies that tie into the production, but the policies that the city have. I mean, first of all, to make sure that the policies reconcile with what the needs are, like unit size and making sure they're reaching the right people, and then looking at like our last conversation about that we have rebate and fee, and we have policies that don't encourage production, and I think that's the reconciliation of like how we make sure we balance that. Because there's different. You're right. There's different policy. There's zoning policy, development policy, and then there's the overarching policy, which can encourage more of that, or could encourage some of that production to pull towards affordable.
Yeah, so I am going to jump in because even though I said I wouldn't, to add a little clarity. I mean, in my time on this committee, like we'll take fee rebate. We've been talking about fee rebate for the entire 4 years that I've been on this committee. And it's moved back and forth from a very unrestricted program, a program that was tied almost exclusively to the market price of the housing unit, to a program that became very restrictive with all of these other layers. And now we're talking about toggling it back. That's, the policy piece that I'm saying is we need an overall focus on what we're trying to achieve by the programs that we put in place, right? So several years ago, we built permanent affordability or long-term affordability into a lot of our incentive programs. That was a policy choice, capital P policy, that long-term affordability is the thing that we need, right? That we wanted to hang on to the subsidy that we put into units for as long as we possibly could. And that to some degree led to the decline in the actual number of development opportunities that were happening in the city. We basically put the brakes on at the time we should have been putting, should have been stepping on the gas pedal. It was all extremely well intentioned. We wanted to make sure that we kept that we didn't lose affordable housing, that we were investing money into building. But what it meant is we stopped investing money in building I won't say in building anything, but so that's what when I say policy, I'm thinking, what is our overarching strategy that we can hang on to for long enough that we actually see some of it come to fruition, right? Because we've kind of tacked back and forth. Even this morning, when we that little bit that Vidila jumped on, talked about the flag lot thing, there was the comment that he made about, well, that really doesn't work. That breaks up the flow of the streetscape. Okay, that's great. Like, are we concerned about the flow of the streetscape, or are we concerned about, do people have a place to live? And we haven't, we've let ourselves get shifted off our line for things like that. And there needs to be a clear sense of, this is the direction, this is what's most important, and we're not going to let anything shove us off of, people need a place to sleep at night.
David?
Yeah, I agree a lot with Andy, and I wanted to raise my hand now because I have to leave in 5 minutes, unfortunately. Second month on this committee, used to follow a lot of AHAC back when I was working with the land trusts, and we were starting our business planning. So I have seen some of the swing. And I guess, I kind of am excited that there's maybe an opportunity to, meet with HCD, to look at what the committee is going to do. I mean, I'm concerned about the new process, but I'm also hopeful that these committees can improve, and that we can have really more direct input from the community. Because I think part of the reason this happens, right, is you've got a lot of people really interested in this issue, and you got a lot of knowledge on this issue, but not a lot of community members. Not a lot of people who are going to end up changing what's going to drive it. Like, you can come up with these solutions and things, but if the community is not convinced and on board, you're going to see things swing back the other way. And I think the fee rebate example Andy's using, well, we need to, because the housing, I work in homelessness, which is just, it's tangential to affordable housing, and there's a lot of overlap, but it's a different issue. Like, the tools you're going to use to address that issue are not going to be the same for keeping teachers and police officers and people who've grown up here in Asheville. I mean, the policies, the choices are not always the same. And I'm looking, I do agree that building, and there's some things that will just help, like they'll help certain things in the short run. The incentive programs are a good idea. And then it's not going to trickle down, but it will actually, make a long-term impact to increase our stock here. There's no question. But I'm excited to see what happens. I do think, like, making a work plan, and making motions and things and studying things, it's fine, but we kind of need to see what's going to happen, because it's a lot of time and work for a lot of busy people. And I would want to wait and see what comes out of this process. Maybe nothing will, but if they're looking to move pretty quickly, and by the summer, this is combined with HIAC and some other committee, I think then we can at least get that direction on what we're supposed to be doing.
Margie?
I'm not sure when the next Bowen report is going to be coming out, but if we go back to when we said a couple of years ago how many thousands of units that we needed, the only way we're going to get there, to be very honest, is tax credit projects, whether it's 9% or 4%. The 4% has much more flexibility with developers. And the city could use, I believe they can use the ARPA funds to help fill those gaps. So when you're doing 150 to 200 apartments, affordable, you can fill the gap much quicker than 25 or 30 or even 45. It does take time to build it, and that's something we have to keep considering. I am hoping that some of the things that have happened recently are not going to drive away developers. A lot of the developers that I talk to every day are going to the county. They're not coming into the city. And I think Asheville has a dubious reputation at the moment about what they're willing to do or not do, and regulations and policies that restrict developers. So I'm hoping that with new direction, whatever comes out of these new groups and coordination with HCD or with the comprehensive plan, if you think about the comprehensive plan and Tunnel Road and Patton Avenue and all those things, we need to get that marketed out in the city for everyone to see that we're willing and we're going to make this happen. And I think that that is something that is missing right now. And no matter how much planning we want to do, until we get direction from city council as to what they plan to do with our group, that I think is going to determine how much emphasis we have great ideas that we can do. So, but the way to get more production, a larger number of apartments, the fastest, is working with developers that we're willing to do either 4% or 9% tax credit projects.
Chris?
Yeah, so I'll just echo off a couple of things. Margie made reference to people she's talking to going into the county. I've seen a huge uptick in people going further. Henderson County, Haywood County, Transylvania, and the surrounding counties. The amount of people that are coming to our office talking about multifamily and residential projects in these surrounding areas is it's more than I've seen, and it's significantly more than I've seen in the last 16 years that I've been working in this market. I also echo what Brandy said. I'll step back for a second. This meeting feels a little different than ones we've been having. We're talking more about, I feel like we're talking more about acknowledging that we've been talking about the same thing at all the meetings that I've been a part of since I joined in around September. I feel like we have a lot of the same conversations. This one, we're having more conversations about how do we quit having the same conversation. And I really appreciate that. And I'm an eternal optimist in all aspects of life. And so I've got these high hopes that this HCD connection will help us take these conversations and lead them towards true policy changes that are more reflective of what you, Barry, what you made reference in the past, how there seemed to be when we were all in person, these meetings were in person, there was a networking aspect, there was a more connection to where things moved, like these conversations led to a next step, as opposed, I think it's a lot of things that have created the situation we're in now. I mean, this Zoom is one of them. I mean, it completely removes that. It's so much easier for those next steps forward to occur in the scenario that you described earlier. So I'm hopeful that as we move forward and this HCD, we can have some of these conversations with an HCD meeting with ourselves to talk about how to create those connections and move things forward as maybe we even get out of the now with city council meeting in person last week. There's opportunities that we can get back into a more productive workflow.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo something that Brandy kind of started us off with, which is I think we just need to move these things to constructive, action-oriented conversations versus kind of we're bringing up a lot of anecdotes and we're kind of drifting around here. If we want to talk about strategy and policies that the city has, then we should have a structured discussion and time frame around it. Because I just feel like we're, one of I think the things that's brought on boards and commissions trying to make reforms is that so many, I'm sure a lot of the other boards out there have the same issue we're having, which is getting traction on making a difference. So I would be all in favor of us going through and going through all the policy systematically and making a set of recommendations. But I think what I don't want to see us do is just sort of say, let's work on something and then it gets thrown over the wall. And I think down payment assistance is one of the best examples this committee worked on. When I first joined, all we did was spend half of each meeting for 3 meetings working on down payment assistance, and then it went over the wall and nothing ever happened. And that's where my frustration goes. I'd just like to see us accomplish something other than coming together to care about an issue, which I think there's universal agreement on, but that doesn't help move the peanut forward.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, it's been, I mean, like I said, I shared how it all used to work, especially when we were in person. And when, I mean, honestly, our direction always started from having council direction. Council would set their annual priorities and they would be very specific, not just, with affordable housing. I mean, I've shared this, but council's priority is not housing. And that's why we're floundering. And that's why our messaging doesn't get much traction, because it wasn't, I don't even think it was on their priority list. I don't think housing was actually on their actual priority list. It was made up for last year. It was like, oh, of course it is. I mean, of course, yeah, we always care about that, but I don't think there was any of the details. And it's just a difference. It was in the beginning, it was in the early days, it was really different. There was a lot of unified interest on city council of how to make affordable housing move. So, and here we are, in an election year. so we'll see how this all changes. But yeah, it's been, certainly it's been, the past 2-3 years have been some of the most frustrating, because no matter what we do, there's never, it's like there's never a next step for what happens with what we do, because there's not traction from it. And then we don't have really clear direction of what they want the focus to be. So we don't have things to move to encourage that. So yeah, there's no question. It's been challenging. So, but yeah, I mean, certainly appreciate the conversation, and we'll see where kind of this all goes. And I think we've got 15 minutes left. Just thinking on some of our future, I'm just looking through informal discussion, future agenda. Ricky, I just see you raise your hand.
Hey, Barry. I didn't know if y'all wanted to talk a little bit about the mobile homes last
Sure.
meeting, or.
Yeah, I'll bring it. I think we were told is, I think Sasha is going to come up with next, but yeah, if you want to, the one part that we were definitely going to want to bring up was, at least to understand, there's 2 parts of the manufactured homes. There's the allowing repair funds, the CBD repair funds, right, Andy, for and that's one part of the conversation. We wanted to understand what is the policy change that would be needed to allow repair funds to be used for manufactured homes. And then what I was shared with is that in April, I think we'll have a deeper conversation on manufactured homes. Is there anything input you can share on that, Ricky?
Yeah, we've had a little bit of the internal discussion since that time about what the age of homes, potentially single wides. They're narrow, they're shallow and long. We have topography. so we've just talked about like individually, they may not be suitable on a lot of our lots that are sloping, but I don't think they're a bad housing option. There may be areas further out in our kind of the more rural portions of the city. We have some areas in western part of the city towards Sand Hill. They're a little bit flatter. The western side of the valley seems to lay flatter when you look at the county. And then also, existing mobile home parks that are not currently zoned in a mobile home community overlay district, and the issues under our non-conforming section that basically say if you have a mobile home park, that even if it has a mobile home community overlay zoning applied, but the park's non-conforming for our standards, the design, the layout, the setbacks, whatever, an individual space stays vacant for 180 days. They lose the space. So you could have a 25 unit mobile home park and have 2 vacant. It's not the park that's non-conforming, it's the individual space. So we're losing opportunity for housing stock one at a time. It's a very gradual erosion. And I'm actually dealing with one right now that is a person that's working with a lot of groups trying to rehouse veterans, and he's got 2 or 3 spots that are available. I can't issue the permit. They've been vacant. But we know that housing is critical for persons that are experiencing homelessness, regardless of, your personal opinions about that type of housing. Getting somebody off the street, out from under the bridge or the woods, is the key, most important thing to getting them assistance, getting stability. So I think that's what we just kind of come aware of this like last summer, that we really honed on this crisis that we're exacerbating this. Unknowingly and not really directed. It's just a legacy of probably 25 years of a UDO that's really past its prime. And I know that Chris Day and you deal with every day, and you too, Barry. I think that's something to think. And Barry and Chris, we've also talked, and Margie. I'll just say that as far as like this group, I would like to see like an isotherm. It's kind of a weird term, but you know how they show on the weather, the 32-degree line and where that moves up and down each day and night. I'd be curious to find out where that line of affordable, where is the median home affordable? If it's 275, where are the homes at? Where is the general price range of the census tract or zip code? Where are those codes at in relation to downtown Asheville? Like, so how far are people having to drive to find the average zip code? Is it in Irwin, Tennessee? Is it Marion, or is that somewhere in Leicester? I don't know, but clearly, Barry, you've keyed on something, that if there's 5 houses in the Asheville city limits of under 375, that's a problem. And it's like you said, the county's attacking housing affordability. I'm not sure where the 2 groups are going to intersect, but it's clear, like we said before, it's a regional problem, and it also undermines our sustainability, because when people drive 45 minutes, an hour and a half to come to work, it's contributing to our carbon pollution. And so if we're cutting trees down further out and they're driving long ways, it's not helping us as a region either. So.
Yeah, no, I think where this, at least the data that drove the conversation about this came from those same, reports of looking at, okay, there's nothing less than 275, and then looking about, well, there are in the county manufactured homes, and then really looking at the sale report from 2021 was kind of really where this like, this is interesting that, I think it was in 2021 of sales less than 275 in the county, I think it was like, I don't remember the number. I think it was like 23 or 25% of them were manufactured homes. And so we're us as and this is one of those examples of this policy production. What is overarching policy? This discussion is like, we're like, as much as we're a policy, we're also working on creative solutions. And it's an uncomfortable discussion. There's not many places, I can't think of many other places in the city that's going to introduce a conversation of maybe we should explore allowing manufactured homes and have the data to back it up. And And that's where I guess that's where how I see that's where our committee comes in, is like, we're trying to come up with these innovative, creative ways that we could, and then how do we move it through the chain, because we have experience with that. But yeah,
So Ricky, sorry.
Go ahead.
How hard is it to change the UDO? I mean, the UDO is made up of I mean, I don't understand if this is something that is the 180 days and not being able to get a permit. Is it not possible? I mean, the UDO is made up of people, and the UDO is made up of the city staff. This is not brain surgery. It's simply a policy that could be changed. Why can't it be changed to make a difference? Maybe I'm simplifying it, but.
Well, I would piggyback on that question, Margie. I think there's multiple ways. I feel like, Barry, you had experience with helping get the cottage development rules in the UDO changed, and that seemed to go pretty smoothly. But to counteract that, the open space changes to the UDO have been a mess and very long, drawn out process.
It's all about text and map amendments.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but what I've explored, I've seen over the years, if you follow, like, there's process. If you follow the process, things get slow and they become political and they become too opinionated. The honest, easiest way to change the UDO is by the citizens who file a citizen suggested wording amendment. And I think it's only been done 2 or 3 times. I did it with the cottage ordinance to change the slope percentages, and it was used for a cat cafe downtown. I don't know how many other times it's been used. But that is, public speaking, the best possible way to change the UDO is to do it yourself. You to suggest it, you to write what the change should be. You pay the $500 and it moves to the top of the stack. Because we've been talking about wanting to change the UDO, discussions about that for years. And with the staff, the way, staff suggests, just the way how understaffed everyone is, it's that's going to be a year off conversation. That's, or more. Sasha.
Thanks. I think maybe Ricky and I can talk about this. I think the non-conforming piece might be the easy fix, and that's a shorter timeline, and maybe we just need to squeeze that in our work plan. We could talk about that. I think the other thing, when you all were talking about changing zoning in general, allowing manufactured housing in more districts, obviously that becomes more complicated. And one question I had for you all, where you have expertise, is just from a market point of view. I'm not sure, if I have a lot, I guess, how likely is it that people are going to do that, right? Is it going to be if I have extra land on my, on my lot, and I have somebody in my family, right? Versus selling it, if I can sell it for a lot more for a single family home versus a mobile home. And is there a strategic way to think about it? So I think, those are some of the questions. If we were going to look at, that's a longer process. So I agree with you on the non-conforming thing. I think we should work on speeding that up. But this other bigger bag of things, I think it's complicated. And we would also rely on some of your technical expertise.
But to Margie's point, it's not rocket science. It's political science and social science, but it's not rocket science. If you allow manufactured housing as a permitted use by right, it's a huge leap forward for giving someone the option to build something on a given piece of property.
Sure. I don't think it's that simple, though. I don't.
Do we have this, is the plan to have a deeper, that was my understanding, that was going to be a deeper conversation in April?
Right. Yeah. I think April or May. I'm scared to promise, but yeah. We're working on bringing you all some information on.
So I'd say, in essence of time, we need to move. But one of the things I would, for our committee to think about is so this is, we realize, okay, yeah, this could be a really good thing, could open up. One thing maybe I'd ask for us to consider throughout the month is if we want to look at this as an affordable housing only policy. If we say, because there might be more appetite for making that happen. If we say, if someone's willing to restrict their lot for affordable uses, then we will allow a manufacturing overlay to happen on it, because I've thought that might be a way to even do, to make the conversation more palatable, or even to do it as a citizen suggested wording amendment, that if you can change just a few words in something, if you could take the manufactured overlay and just say, hey, we're going to make a citizens change that if it meets affordable standards, you can have a mini manufactured overlay. It might be a way to tweak it without having to rewrite the world. So I think that's what I would just ask, maybe us to think about if it's something we want to explore the bigger discussion on, or if we want to tie this discussion specifically towards our committee, which means as a use for affordable housing. So someone could use it if it's going to be restricted by a certain price point with a deed restriction, if it's going to be rented as affordable. That's just what I'll ask for to consider, and we'll continue this conversation in April. And then the other part I'll ask for the research on. We have time. We got to wrap up. But we really wanted to understand what the change that would be needed to allow CDBG repair funds to be worked on manufactured homes, because currently my understanding is the definition is it can only be used on permanent homes. And so I'd ask, I don't know if we know the answer to what the change would be. Okay.
So I have that pulled up if you want to, if I can have just a minute to speak to it. I know we're at the end of our time, but so the CDBG regulations do allow CDBG to be applied in all its different uses on manufactured homes, as long as they're considered a part of the local permanent housing stock. Our individual City of Asheville CDBG manual that was updated as recently as 2021 continues to say that manufactured housings are not eligible unless they're on a permanent foundation. So we just need to make that change. And that document, again, later in the document says that it can be changed by the authority of the director of the Community and Economic Development Department, as long as the change is consistent with what's allowed by HUD. So clearly CDBG, cities all over the country are using CDBG, even for replacing pre-HUD code mobile homes with newer models. It's clearly an allowable use under CDBG. We just need to make that change. And it would be great if we could get that done as the HCD is reviewing the upcoming rounds of CDBG funding, so that organizations that operate those kinds of repair programs are able to finally be able to serve the 15% or so of our community that calls manufactured housing home.
Do you want to make a motion on that?
I move that.
I'm just thinking the timing of CDBG this month.
I move that the City of Asheville CDBG manual be amended to be consistent with the CDBG program guides by HUD, and remove the requirement that manufactured housing be on a permanent foundation in order to be eligible for CDBG funded home rehabilitation.
A second on that.
I second.
Any discussion? No, do roll call vote. Scott.
Aye.
Margie.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
David's left, and then myself. That's aye. Thank you. Glad we snuck that in. Yeah, because I know the timing. They're doing the CDBG reviews in March, so we'll see what happens. All right. Do we, just so I know, Christina, do we have any public comment on the line?
I can do it. Hey, Barry, this is Laura. We do have one caller who's called in, and I'll connect them to you.
Okay, thanks.
They're live. It is now your turn to speak.
Yeah,
your
hello.
microphone is unmuted. You are speaking in the meeting, and you have 3 minutes to the caller who called in.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is Greg Warren, Children First Communities in Schools. Appreciate the discussion today. I just wanted to lift up one thing that I think is underlying a lot of the concern about where the committee goes, and that's just the resourcing that is has been shrinking over the years from all of our federal housing programs in terms of helping us build the capacity and have the resources at the local level. And I think one thing that this committee might want to consider doing is with Congress now considering its fiscal 2022 plans and even a modified Build Back Better that all have some pretty amazing opportunities if they get moved on to expand, rental vouchers, additional funding for LIHTC projects, additional funding for rehab, renovation, all the things that we struggle with at a city and county level because we just don't have the funds and resources. We need to get that federal tap flowing and reinvesting back in our communities. And maybe there's a chance or an opportunity for both AHEC, maybe as a committee, even contact our congressional delegation on these priorities, or even recommend that the city council as a body take a stand and contact Congress, because we need those resources. That's a critical issue to solving this, and we know we don't have enough monies at the local level to do all the great things we want to do. Thank you so much, and appreciate your conversation.
Thanks, Greg. I think the only one question I do want to ask from Nikki, if she's still there, just the update on the vacant positions, where we are with those coming online. I see the one's not the one that was existing is not advertised anymore. I was just saying where we are with that, and then what's up with the two new positions with the word affordable housing in them.
Absolutely. And so, yes, the Community Development Division Manager posting has now closed. And that means we then move into the interview phase. So I'm really excited about that. We've got dates set on our calendar for this month. And so we'll be conducting those interviews, and I'm very hopeful that we can have that position come online very soon. So realistically, I'm thinking April timeframe is what's realistic in terms of going through the process and actually having someone onboarded. I am this close to getting those postings approved by HR, both the affordable housing officer and the affordable housing specialist. My intent is to advertise those together, and hopefully we can look at a team and just see how things align there and getting both of those positions. I expect that we'll allow that to post for a good solid month here, and then start doing interviews perhaps in April. So I'm really excited about the future of that. Just some other staffing. We, as you all may know, as part of the home ARP allocation, $4.7 million was allocated to the home consortium area. So Buncombe, Madison, Henderson, Transylvania, to support and address homelessness in our community. And so we created a position to support that work. It's the Home ARP Program Manager, and that is actually an internal shift that has happened. So one of our experts here in homelessness, Brian Husky, has agreed to take on that role. So Brian will be leading the charge and working through the home consortium. There's a lot of planning that needs to occur for that, but we're happy to announce that as well. So yeah, certainly wanting to make some bold strides there and be fully staffed. Hopefully by the end of the fiscal year is my target.
Okay, cool. Before we close, I'll just share there's two things I know will probably come out in the news. So just wanted to make sure our committee was aware of them if they want to do any back research on the 319 Biltmore project has my understanding is a new letter of intent. They've changed. It's not Homes Urban anymore. I've heard they've backed out, and it's now a letter of intent's been signed with the runner-up proposal. So it's going to be out in the news. I don't know if y'all have heard something about it, but I just want to keep you in the loop because it's going to be a big conversation. It kind of happened very fast,
I can certainly speak to that.
Sure.
Just to
Okay.
provide some information.
Sure.
So certainly this is one of our bond projects, and we're very committed to seeing an affordable mixed use project there at 319. And the city's process for that, like you said, Barry, we were working with the top ranked developer, Homes Urban, throughout that selection. But yes, at this point, Homes Urban has decided to withdraw. And so we have terminated our relationship with Homes Urban. But through our process, that means that we then approach our second top ranked firm, which is Laurel Street Residential, and begin negotiations with that firm to hopefully achieve a developer agreement. So our intention is to work with Laurel Street. We'd love to see a project or a developer agreement rather come before council in the summer. So that would come through HCD and then come before council this summer. But again, because this is a bond site, a bond project, we're certainly hoping to prioritize this and see a successful development at that site move forward.
Thanks for that update. And then I think is there a Luigi application for those micro units? Is that in place?
That application has been received. And yes, I met with them yesterday, actually. So we're looking at doing the staff review of that Luigi ask, and then having that come through the process, thinking about the April timeframe for that to be under review through HCD.
Okay. All right.
I just want to do a little plug too, just one more plug, because I know that our office, I appreciate the delineation of roles here, how we see policy become action, right? And so just wanted to share and highlight that as we do the work of implementation here in the department, and as you're hearing me earlier talk about how we look at supporting and having the infrastructure and the systems in place through staffing or administration to really get these policies on the ground, I want to highlight the Haywood Street community development project that was approved by council on Tuesday night. So Haywood Street is a nonprofit, newly created, looking to provide permanent affordable housing in our area. And so we're glad to kind of bring them into the fold of the participants in the affordable housing. And this is a nonprofit, permanent affordable project, 45 units there on West Haywood Street. The city's commitment there totals 2.5 by the time we invest through land, housing trust fund, as well as an initial grant for some of the due diligence costs. Our total ask was 2.5. Dogwood and the county are also joining in that funding for that project. So just wanted to highlight that. So they do have single bedroom, 2 and 3 bedrooms there, and then doing a mixed income with 80%, 60%, and 30% AMI units available. And so we're excited about that. I think their closing date is sometime in April. So we are hard at work on getting those agreements in place, those deed restrictions, those deed of trust instruments to really govern that for permanent affordability.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Any other comments, questions before we close out? All right. Thank you. I certainly appreciate everyone's time, conversation, and appreciate the extra time since we went over a bit. We'll see y'all later. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks all.